First of all, we're with Dave. He's Director of Operations of the Whitney. And Dave, thank you for taking time to tell us a little bit about your restaurant.
It's a pleasure to be here.
So let's start off with a little bit of the history. So why don't you tell me, how did this become the Whitney?
Well, the house has a very storied history. It began as a private residence for David Whitney, he was a lumber baron, but he was really all things natural resources. He was a guy who moved here from the East Coast. He decided to go west, and he got as far as Detroit and fell in love with the fact that there were waterways, transportation was good. So he just put stakes down here and began expanding his lumber business into northern Michigan. During the Great Fires in Chicago is where he really kind of made his fortune and decided to build a palace right here in Detroit for his family to live in.
Very good. Now, when did it get constructed?
It began in 1893. It took 10 years to complete the entire home. The cost at that point was $400,000, which just converted for inflation today would be about $11 million. And he spared no expense or nothing was left to chance or left to poor quality. There's wood here from every continent. The formal dining room has beautiful, beautiful mahogany from Honduras. He used a fair amount of white pine from northern Michigan to kind of commingle with all of the beautiful woods that he had. The tile floor in the Great Hall was a piece of art all on its own. It's one of those things that the geometry on it lines up so it looks the same from every single angle that you view it. And he hired 2 craftswomen from Italy to come here, and they cut and laid every individual tile by hand. And that's just sort of indicative of the type of work that he had done to get this house constructed and rolling. Unfortunately, he moved in, didn't live very long after he moved in, and he was a typical lumber baron, interesting guy. He would have been happy living in a log cabin up north, I think, but his wife loved the luxury. And so this was really a palace and an homage for her. And he brought in pink jasper granite from South Dakota to kind of tell you what sort of a guy he is. He searched the world. He really did look all around the world at marble and at different things that he could use to build the home. And he came across pink jasper granite in South Dakota. So being David Whitney, he didn't buy granite. He bought the mine and took all the granite from that granite mine in South Dakota and brought it here. And on site, he had a mason, a lumber mill, blacksmith, all of the work of milling, grinding, cutting the stones, everything was done right here on property. And that's the way that he built his home.
Yeah, it's very impressive. As a matter of fact, it does have a pink look to it when you're looking from the street, and it's beautiful. And I noticed that even the windows, everything around it, the cornices are polished.
Yeah, and as you walk around the house, you'll find, for no apparent reason, there'll be a design work, a gargoyle. His family crest is embedded in the granite on one side of the house. There's just sort of these little pieces of art that wrap around the house both inside and outside. It's a pretty interesting place. It's a restaurant that just sort of happens to be located inside a museum. It's pretty cool.
When did it become a restaurant?
Dick Kuhn, who made his fortune with Lionel Trains, purchased a building back in the late 60s. And he began the process of renovating it, spent $3 million to convert it from a home to a restaurant. And it was a lot of infrastructure things. They had to put in sprinklers and industrial kitchens and restrooms and all that sort of thing. It opened in the late 70s, early 80s. And it was the finest restaurant between New York and Chicago. It was a palace. It has always been a difficult business to maintain because the operational costs are so high. If you think about restaurants that you visit, high-end steakhouses, for example, they're built inside buildings that were designed to be restaurants, from energy efficiency standards to the way the buildings are laid out. This is a home with dining rooms and fireplaces and home heating and all of those different things that have been here for 100 plus years. So the operational costs are too high, and he consistently had challenges trying to maintain it as a profitable, or at least not a money-draining enterprise. And he lost interest over the years and several times tried to figure out ways to get out, including gifting it to Wayne State. Wayne State has been offered this property on several occasions and never wanted it. just because of the cost. Well, it's the cost of operating it. And finally, the current owners, Bud Liebler, who was a Chrysler executive, he saw the potential in the property as it sort of was declining, as Dick unfortunately lost interest in it. And so he came in, purchased it, added another $1 million in renovations. He's now owned it for about 11 years. And finally, with the resurgence of Detroit, it's becoming self-sustaining. And we're able to start to put some resources back into maintaining the beauty of the mansion. So this is really Bud's gift to Detroit, and it's turned out to be quite an experience for him to learn about the restaurant business, and at the same time for him to be able to take the pride of ownership in a mansion like this in a city like Detroit.
Going into the restaurant, the Cuisine, tell us a little bit about the Cuisine. What's your specialty? What are, I know you guys are open for brunches, so tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. We feature what we call classic American cuisine. We want you to come in here, get a beautiful plate of food that you understand. We don't want to put things in front of you that you don't know what they are. We don't want to be so boutique gourmet. And there are a lot of restaurants like that in Detroit right now that are opening up kind of little chef-y driven restaurants, and that's great for what they do. But we're here to help you celebrate your 25th anniversary, your 22nd birthday, the new promotion you have. And we're here to let you enjoy the mansion and the ambiance that surrounds you. So we're very interested in serving you a great meal, but we're not going to put things on the plate that have to be explained to you. So our house feature, or our house specialty in the evening is beef Wellington. Very classic kind of a dish. We zip it up a little bit by including some shredded prosciutto for saltiness and a little bit of wilted spinach that gives it some extra earthiness, and it puts a Whitney twist on a real traditional favorite. But even our seafood dishes, our top-selling seafood dish is a seafood sauté, which is simply shrimp, scallops, and lobster sautéed, a little white wine, a little butter, a little lemon. We want the seafood to shine. We want you to be able to sort of enjoy the simple pleasure of great seafood without doing a lot of infusing and fancy coating and crusting and all that sort of thing. We want to keep it pretty basic and simple and straightforward and excellent. So that's what we do. We serve breakfast and lunch, or you can call it brunch, 7 days a week. We get a fair amount of local business traffic who want to come in here and have a spot to have a little breakfast meeting, some coffee, some interesting food. And again, we're serving food that's interesting but not overwhelming. Top-selling item at brunch, believe it or not, is chicken and waffles. We put a real Whitney twist on it by serving chicken that's been coated with a pecan and panko breadcrumb, very crunchy. And then the syrup is Michigan maple syrup that we get from a tree tapper up in northern Michigan. We add some bourbon and a little bit of cayenne pepper, so you get this very kind of smoky, spicy syrup that goes over the chicken and waffles, and it's a different kind of thing. And then at the other end of the spectrum, we also have eggs Nantucket, which is perfectly poached eggs on a crab cake over some wilted spinach with fennel hollandaise. So some interesting things.
Making me hungry.
Yeah, some straightforward things. So a little bit of everything.